Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. So, okay, making sure all these are lined up properly and fit within the appropriate box. Doesn't really matter. The point of this video is to state the obvious. Something is going on within either embargo, within streaming services, within illegal trafficking of anime stuff, or online services. But as business wise, there's a balance between physical products and digital products. And apparently, a lot of money hasn't been made from the actual physical product part. Distribution of CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, so on and so forth. Not that anyone really buy a lot of CDs and Blu-rays anymore. Most things are digital. So if anime came out in January of 2023, the start of the horse race, for which is the typical standard. And to let me be completely clear about this, that's when the horse race starts for most anime in Japan, at January. And then moving forward, the next 3 months after, that's when the next group of new anime comes out. And 3 months after that, and 3 months after that. Every now and again, you get a new anime that comes out per each month. But the Japanese have always followed a standard. Per each 3 months, a new anime would come out. And any anime in between that's a new are open windows, but typically following months were continuing series things, not new anime type. So the whole race is to get towards the the end of the line, at the finish line, before November, December of 2023. And during that period, there's typically four months of those 12 months that new anime comes out. It typically come out in January, and then February and March, not a lot. Then they come out again in April, and then May and June, not so much, and then again in July, and then again in October again, and then you might get some in December and or September and October. New anime come out September, October, and then it goes stale for about November and December, and then transition back to January again. So typically, they follow the set path, traditional way of doing things when it comes to anime distribution of new content. Once every 3 months, you would get some new content from Japan, and then within each of those new months that following, like February and March, you either get a continuing series or every now and again a new anime series pop up. But you don't get a lot. At the beginning, you get this a lot. And then in April again, you get another group. Then, July again, you get another. And then all the way in September, October, you get another. So, yeah, that's the description of why certain things for February and March haven't been distributed in streaming service specifically, not in stores or online like Amazon. So you could buy physical products of, let's say, this anime right here, Blue Giant, and this anime right here, Kimi no Ashita and Bokuga Ashita. Still don't know if they're both worlds connected to each other, but they're two separate anime created by the same company. But I'm not sure if they're two parallel universes. I haven't seen it because it hasn't been released to streaming services, so I can't tell. And I haven't bought the product either. Same goes for this one, Sword Art Online, progressive. The latest one, still Still nothing. No word from that. Going to streaming service. No, no Netflix. No Crunchyroll. No online resources. No YouTube. No Daily Motion. No nothing. You would have to actually buy a physical product from a store, or go to Japan and get the physical product, or order online to get the physical product. No streaming service have has had any of these animes since. Same goes for all of last year. Um, for some bizarre reason, late 2022, the first Slam Dunk was never released for streaming services and still hasn't been released for streaming services. And the same goes for Shizume no Tojimari, the actual anime movie I've been trying to see for the past 6 months. The past 6 months on streaming services. Now, at this point, I'm going to actually buy a physical copy of this thing from CD Japan and then watch the damn thing. Because whatever the crackdown is on streaming services, whatever it is, I mean, I'm pretty sure I already know what it is. Is people are making money out of the physical products. That's what it is. That's pretty much what it is. Like, hey, you want to watch this movie? You either go to the movie theater or you pay for it, a physical copy. We don't care about streaming services. That's what that means to me. When something goes for more than 2 months without an anime, a new anime, or more than 2 months without an anime that came out in 2022, a movie that you can only purchase it from a store or go watch it in a cinema. So, moving forward from that, since the only product that has been released in March of 2022, this month, that's not a new anime, that's a continuing anime, and is not One Piece, and is not um, Jujutsu Kaisen, and is not uh, oh, Demon Slayer, because those are also delayed as well due to streaming services or an embargo or something, for reasons why, based on it's those already came out in Japan. It's been more than a month, and the first episode of those seasons haven't even been released yet. But however, the first episode of the season finale of Attack on Titan has been released for March of 2023. So thankfully we're able to get at least that, because Demon Slayer isn't here and One Piece isn't here and other products aren't here yet for any streaming services. So for today, I will have to set my girl Susume no Tojimari aside and probably buy a physical copy of that. And for the month of March, there's only one goddamn anime that's been released under the continuing series, and it's not something like for a little kid, and it's not a new anime, because all the new animes where it's a new series or a new movie have not been released for streaming services yet. I cannot find anything anywhere, but you damn sure can find it if you go and actually buy the product from Amazon or something. But if you want to wait for streaming services, well, good luck. So the only thing released now for streaming services that is actually online right now that you can find, that's a continuing anime, is Attack on Titan, the final season and episode 1. So this is Attack on Titan, final season, episode 1. This first image represents Attack on Titan, final season, episode 1, which is season 4. And so I'll start this off by first, if I didn't introduce myself before, since this is the anime I'm going to get into, and all those animes I talked about are things that haven't been showing up yet. My name is Magid. I do anime gaming, and mangas as well. And next month, I'm doing a manga. I am not waiting for animes anymore. I'm doing a manga. And yes, April is the next month for when anime are going to be released, new ones. But I'm not doing that. I skipped over 2 months, February and most of March, just to try to wait for anime to be released for streaming services. I'm not going to do it. For the month of April, it's going to be a manga month. So for right now, this is Attack on Titan season 4. And it starts off, and it's pretty wild. So before I get into Attack on Titan, I'll make this one really quick so I don't go drag on forever. What is Attack on Titan? Attack on Titan basically a world, a reality. You could say Earth, or you could say another planet, whatever you want. Um, a reality where human beings exist. Let's say Earth in some thousands or hundreds of thousands of years later, or some alternate reality of Earth, some thousands or hundreds of thousands of years later, where humanity has come to an end, blah, 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 and new people grew, new people developed, and a new life, new human beings persevere and continue on. So in this world, there are certain things called Titans, and Titans are basically the description of the enemy of this world. Like if you're new to Attack on Titan, they're huge kaiju-like creatures. That's different from kaiju-like creatures. They're not just going to go Mothra down Main Street and destroy everything. They're simply going to go Mothra down Main Street and they're going to start eating people. So these are different from regular kaijus. They like to chomp on people every now and again. Or should I say, their primary objective is to kill and to chomp. So they eat. And what's weird about these kaijus in comparison to other, kaijus or other giant creatures that you've seen in anime is that these beings are human in form and likeness. Face, arms, legs, body, hair, the whole nine. They look like giant-sized human beings that are deformed. Deformed in the body, deformed in the face, deformed in the arm. But they have eyes, they have ears, they have mouth, and they have nose. But they're human in form. Some are fat, some are skinny, but they all look human. They all have hair. Some don't have hair, but they all have 2 eyes, nose, mouth. The whole thing. And they devour human beings. So in some case, that is even worse than like a Godzilla or a spider monster devouring people, because it's a giant-sized human being devouring another human being, something like that. Moving forward from that, um, you have a group of people, survivors, and they fight against these kaiju's, and they're part of an armament in order to protect what's remaining of humanity behind a wall, a giant wall, 3 specific walls to keep them from protection from these creatures. Moving forward in the story, the said group get to lose a lot of members, and a lot of new members show up. Um, a lot of people eventually gets wiped out, and a lot of new people spawn. But most of the old cast are still here. And as you can see in this image, one of this representation is an old cast. One of them is Annie, and the other one is Renner. And they're consoling each other on their entire journey through from the first time they met to where they are now, and how they both became involved in everything, and how they got manipulated into becoming like kaiju type creatures. So another description with regards to this anime is that um, these giant creatures aren't just beings that walk outside the wall threatening the safety of those inside the wall. These giant-sized creatures are of two forms. There are those who are permanently stated to be giant creatures, and then there are those who are transformed giant-sized creatures. And transformed giant-sized creatures are the more intelligent ones because they could pretend to be regular people and infiltrate and do stuff like that under the guise and whims of those who are their leaders, manipulating them behind the shadows. Now, how the difference between one that could transform and one that's permanent is the fact is um, these giant creatures were, spoiler alert, just for those who don't want to hear it, you could close your ears. Um, but I'll say it anyway because this has been out for years. Manufactured, a product was manufactured from someone that got infected by a natural creature, an ancient and very primordial natural creature that's contributed towards the evolution of almost every species on the planet. Not every, but almost every species on the planet. True to life, this actual thing exists. And I was shocked. I was shocked to find out that this actual creature is part of the Cambrian age of human history. That it wasn't something that was just fictitious in the anime, that it actually is a living thing, that it actually exists. Now, whether it could turn people to giant sized kaijus, that's just fictitious. But whether it was part of the human evolution in developing from one form of a species into another, that's 100% accurate. So the developers of this anime and of the manga um, knew this about this creature and used that as an example of evolution of the human species, basically saying the evolution of sea creatures, the evolution of birds, the evolution of human beings all came from beings such as this during the ending of the Cambrian age, basically when there was no need for invertebrate type creatures to exist anymore. And the need for more fleshy creatures were prevalent towards the existence to crawl up on land and start to interact with grass and things that are on land, like that the need to stay on the water or to stay in cool muddy climates was no longer a factor with regards to the existence of evolution. It was more of being able to transcend just being in one type of climate zone. Um, that is the reason why it's called explosion from the Cambrian age, the Cambrian explosion, as they call it. Um, it's because you're able to adapt towards different environments now, whereas in the Cambrian age, most of those creatures were um, either cold-blooded or warm-blooded, and they had to stay in their specific climates types. So moving on from that creature called the hallucigena, a real thing, infected um, a character from an ancient past of human history in this anime called Yermer. And Yermer eventually was the first ever person to become a Titan. And from then on, all the way to now, human beings have been threatened by these Titans. Up until time has passed, children grown, more generation passed, and Titans have been a growing threat throughout centuries of these people's lives. Up to where we are right now within this anime and these main characters, and the story of Attack on Titan is then introduced to us. So that was a little history with regards to how Titans came into being and who got first infected by the Titan in the ancient past, which was 2,000 years ago. This primordial creature infected a young girl called Yermer, a young slave girl, and she was the first to be infected by the Titans over 2,000 years ago, either 2,000 or over 2,000 years ago. So before, I would say before the 2000s, like say 3,000 years ago, there were no such things as Titans. Everything was peaceful. So I wouldn't say peace. Maybe there were still wars and stuff, but the wars were between human beings. It wasn't between giant creatures. The existence of giant creatures came after like 2000s or during the 2000 periods where the first introduction to giant creatures existed. So before that, there were no such things as giant creatures. So we see Annie here and we see Yerma here, and they're talking about the past. They're talking about where things are, talking about where they came from, and they spoke on with regards to what I just spoke on, what Titans are and how to save humanity based on this. And moving on from that, we then see Annie decide she's going to depart and and go do what she has to do to stay away from the conflict. She doesn't want to cause any more havoc, and Annie was once a Titan and caused havoc against humanity. And so she decides to leave. And everyone say their goodbyes. Armin says his goodbyes. Hank says her goodbyes. You know, Mikasa said her goodbyes. And I gotta say, man, from the time period for when Mikasa was first introduced to where Mikasa is right now, she's she looks like totally different. You know, with the short hair, it's the young. If Mikasa had short hair and she was young, it would still look like Mikasa. But now that Mikasa has been a grown woman, you know, it's hard for me to actually say, well, that's still Mikasa. Because it really doesn't look like Mikasa unless you know for a fact that that's Mikasa. Like if you were to first see her and it was first to introduce you, you wouldn't be able to tell that that's Mikasa. So they really change her up a lot. The only thing to recognizable to so you could know it is actually Mikasa is her eyes and the darkness of her hair. How her eyes look and the darkness of her hair. If it wasn't for her eyes and her darkness of her hair's design, you wouldn't be able to tell that that's Mikasa whatsoever at all. Um, yeah, but Armin and the rest of them say their goodbyes, um, and, including Erwin and stuff. Everybody said their goodbyes to Annie, and she gets on, you know, the boat and goes away. Um, but lo and behold, as everyone's preparing to fix up the plane so they could um, get away and leave the loading dock or the port dock, no other than my boy Flock here. I shouldn't say my boy, I mean, pain in the ass Flock here. Decides he's going to show up, and Flock used to be part of the whole, you know, the regiment that these guys were a part of. Eventually, it was discovered that Flock was um, Eldian, and no one knew that he was one, and apparently he was one. And his job is to make sure his people are continued for a long period of time, for generations to come. And they don't want the human beings, the other human being types, to interrupt their way of life and to, basically to exterminate themselves. So let me see here. Um, yeah. So I was making sure, just to make sure I was saying it the right way. Um, the Eldians, I was saying it kind of the wrong way, and the Marleys. Yeah. So yeah. So he was an Eldian, and it wasn't discovered that he was one until later, or at least he didn't state it as obvious. But it was hinted that he could have been, and then it was later discovered that he was. So he tried to stop him from leaving. He damages the plane. Eventually, he gets killed. And everyone realized that he should have been dead a long time ago. They thought he died a long time ago. Apparently, he was still alive, but he finally dies here. And moving forward from that, we then see the giant-sized titans, the titans coming, and they're about to. The colossal titans are about to a sea of them, basically a whole sea of colossal titans that were trapped inside the wall to destroy everything, crush everyone and everything. And these things are like Godzilla type sized creatures, and there are tons of them. Um, and this is bad. And so Erwin tells, Hange, like, listen, um, we need to buy time. Uh, and I keep calling him Erwin. I don't know why I keep doing that. Levy. Levy tells Han, like, listen, we need to buy time. We need to get the hell out of here. You you don't have to stay back, but she wants to stay back because this will be the first time she actually gets to be, I guess you could say, self-sacrifice for the group. At least this is the first time I've seen her do something completely selfless, like completely selfless, like self-sacrifice, um, like martyr type level. And she's not just going to do it just for them. She's going to do it simply because it's part of her enjoyment. She likes this type of stuff, and it's also because she believes in the hope for a better future, whereas most people would have gave up a long time ago. So she's kind of like the rock when everyone's about to crumble. Um, it's kind of a weirdo type rock, but she's the one that brings everyone back to back to the ground when everything's about to crumble. Because she's so normal about the death of everybody and kaiju's eating people and so on and so forth. So she goes on to try to save them, and to stop, not necessarily to save them, but to delay their deaths. So she goes on a rampage and she starts taking out a lot of colossal titans, and they're not going to die from her injuring them. The most she could do is slow them down because the colossal titan's carapace is incredibly thick and incredibly resilient. So it would take a hell of a lot more than what she is carrying in order to just to kill them completely outright. And so she fights her way through all of them, and eventually she dies in spectacular fashion, probably the way she probably wanted to go out. Her coat catches fire due to the fact that there were many sparks from her weapon, as well as the clashing on the Titan's flesh that ignited sparks because their flesh is like steel. It's like incredibly hard. So the burning flames that ignite into the air eventually caught onto her coat and eventually caught onto her entire body. And she goes out in a blaze of glory, literally in a blaze of glory. I mean, when you saying someone goes out in a blaze of glory, she literally goes out in a blaze of glory and dies that way. Eventually, she wakes up thinking nothing has happened. She doesn't realize that she is dead. And in this place, um, open field, clear blue skies, she meets her old crew, people from back in the days. Her friends, those who she was down with, blah, 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 the entire armament. Moving forward from that, we get into chapter 2 of the story, which is later on in various chapters of the manga. This is all still part of episode 1, but we're now in chapter 2 of the story of episode 1. So now that everyone's able to escape, they get on the plane. They patch up the holes that Flock destroyed. I think what was it? It's not Annie. I keep thinking it's Annie. uh, Armin. Armin basically designed, or should I say, Armin basically sketched out the exact scope of exactly how huge Eren body looks right now, how his Titan body has transformed right now. And if no one knows who Eren is, with regards to Attack on Titan, Eren Yeager is basically the protagonist of the entire story from season 1 to where we are now. And in season 4, he's no longer the protagonist of the story. So from season 1 to 3, he was. But in season 4, he's no longer the protagonist. This final season, he's not the protagonist. In season 4, Eren Yeager is the antagonist of the story. He has completely gone, dark side and wants to eliminate all of humanity. And he's discovered this reason why he wants to eliminate all of humanity is by Ymir Freaks, the first ever kaiju type titan, telling her exactly who they are, where they came from, and what is happening, and why Eren Yeager decides he's going to become the catalyst for the destruction of humanity. And Yerma Freaks basically told him her story. And her story goes like this. I was once a slave girl some 2,000 years ago, blah, blah, blah. I got captured by this territorial warlord who was control over my entire town or village. That's part of very distant from where they are, but this warlord was a conqueror, and he conquered things within his vicinity and his region, and I was one of those conquered people. I wasn't part of his so-called nation or anything. I just happened to be like many people who conquered, taken, and made to be a slave for this king. And this king was named Fritz. And my last name wasn't Fritz. My last name is yet to be told in the anime or in the manga. But her first name was Ymir. She never really had a last name, or it's not been described that she had one. But when she was taken by this king, she was a servant in his court, abused, and like all servants and slaves, she was supposed to do hard labor and other things. Eventually, she screwed up and made a huge mistake and boo boo at a task that she was supposed to do. And for funsies, the king punishment was to take take whoever was responsible for a huge screw up and to hunt them down. So that's the king's way of punishing those who um, screw up or those who make huge mistakes. You know, you're not simply dock a pay or fired from a job. You were murdered. So that's how they dealt with making mistakes in the past. Real pieces of shit that king was, and real example of how society as a whole in the past, not just in this anime but in reality too, people did the same thing in reality as well in the past. So when, like, if you ever hear somebody's culture start being snobby about being prejudiced or being brutal to others, remind them where they come from. Remind them if they're some Irish snob talking about this, like remind them of exactly their type of people. Or if they're British, remind them of exactly who they are and where they actually came from and what type of people they are. It's like, listen, who you are now is not who your family was or your lineage was in the past. Like, leave that in the past. If you ever use your lineage as a way of saying we come from a rich history, it's like, yeah, I know about your rich history. Yeah, you're a bunch of crazies. That was your rich history. So remind people who start to get too snobbish about those things. So back to this anime. Um, Yerma told him of this king, King Fritz, hunted her down. She tried to escape him. She eventually fell into a cave. And in that cave, deep into a well in that cave, that she fell into. There was a creature sleeping dormant there, eventually, that she didn't know of, that still existed. I guess in the water in that area was still existed in the water there, and it was by itself for quite some time, sleeping by itself for quite some time without no interruptions from anything or anyone, um, or maybe by accident. It just happened to be that she was the person that fell in there, and it was just happened to be there that day. But eventually, that hallucinogen creature, that's actually a real thing, fused with her and turned her into the first kaiju. And she tells Eren this and how she came to be the first. But then she also tell him that, listen, um, after I was taken by the King Fritz, when he discovered that I have the ability to turn into this giant creature, and he used such giant creature that I became in order to destroy his enemies. And eventually, one of his enemies was a group of people who were a powerful nation called Marley. And Marley, like them, were also conquering types. Very powerful. No one could really stand in their way type. But they were more like the Atlanteans, more like rather than like the Huns. But they were very powerful. Couldn't be taken down by standard means or barbaric ways of doing things. So he eventually defeated them and conquered them. Um, Here's the thing I don't know of. Was did Marley had beef with them before? Did Marley conquer these people and made the slaves out of the Fritz's people before? The Eldians. Before the Eldians made slaves out of the Marley people. So that was never explained in the manga. Did the Marley people first initiated the aggression towards the Eldians? Because it was never described as such in the manga. It was only described as such in the manga that the Eldians defeated a foe that was too powerful for them at the time by using the kaiju type powers, the Titan type powers. And they eventually beat them and made slaves of them. So that's how that came into being. So whether they did it specifically to conquer the Marley people because the Marley people were evil and they too made slaves out of them, the Eldians, that was never described. What was described is that the Eldians did make slaves out of the Marley people and killed them. So, as far as I know, as wicked as Marley people are, they weren't the first people to hop the fence and start beef with the Marley people. Or should I say the Eldians. They weren't the first to start beef with, hop the fence and start beef in the Eldians' backyard. The Eldians were the first to hop the fence and start beef with the Marley people, as far as the manga is described. And due to that encounter, as described in the manga, that's how the Marley came to spite the Eldians and want to eradicate them and call them the devils. And basically won a 2,000-year war, the Titan War, against them in the end. And the survivors, as we see throughout the story, all these humans who joined forces together to fight Titans as centuries pass, are all part of basically those who the Marley people told. Um, it is your purpose to serve and to ensure the survival of the human species against Titans, against Eldians. Um, but the people didn't notice that it was an Eldian slash Marley conflict until, like, say, season 3. Um, so yeah, that's that. And to be honest, if I'm going to take sides with regards to either Marley or Eldians, I would side with none because I do not know for sure if the Marley were actually truly good people because in the anime they're actually considered bad people, as well as in the manga they're considered bad because they manipulated the truth of the past of how that war was won and who was the bad guy at the end of the rainbow in that war. They considered the Eldians to be devils, but in all truth, they never stated that they made slaves out of the Eldians and killed most of the Eldian families and children and all this stuff. So and manipulated the truth of the past to state that the people who were behind those walls were being protected from Titans, when the truth was they weren't being protected from the Titans. Those walls were built to keep the threat in, not to keep the threat from coming in. They were to keep the threat in from getting out. That was the whole purpose of the walls. So everyone who lived inside of the walls, who believed that they were being protected from the Titans invading them, did not realize all the civilians, everyone who lived in there, all of humanity, did not realize that evil was among them the whole time, was inside the wall. Like the threat, the Titans, the origins of a 2,000-year war, all the descendants of these people, that they were descendants. Some of them, majority of them, were descendants of the people who were persecuted simply because they decided to be power hungry and wanted to destroy a nation and roll over another nation. Eventually, that nation sided with other nations and destroyed them, and they ran to their last safe haven refuge, which was Paradise Island, and made their three walls and stayed behind their three walls and made nothing but colossal titans to be manned within those three walls as sentinels, so that if you were to attack them, no matter what force you attack them with, being their last bastion, they made tons and tons of these things. If you were to attack them, they would unleash a hell on earth. Basically, they will unleash things that, in order to ensure the survival of their species, but by doing so, they're basically creating like walking nukes, um, which, if left uncontrolled, can destroy them as well. So, the colossal titans were basically designed to be walking nukes for anyone who would dare to try to wipe out the last of their species. So, in the end, the Eldians were never good people. They were never good from the very beginning. Um, they were conquering people. They were like barbarians. Their job is to go to lands to conquer and to rule over them. And that's what they've done for centuries before they discovered the whole existence of the Titan, from Yermer and Fritz. And eventually they became the progenitors of creating Titans and various different types in order to rule over all of society. Eventually they became like the governing ruling body later on and conquered the world basically until all those who they conquered rose up against them. And in the same fashion how they were once rulers, they were eventually conquered by others who eventually grew to rule again. So those who were under them, who they were under, and who ruled over the various lands, um, and they wanted to destroy the Marley people, eventually came to destroy them and ruled again. So in the end, Marley people turned out to become the rulers all over again. So the Eldians never really truly won against the Marley people in the end. They eventually, because they decided to side with a type of force that was unnatural and unhuman, um, it was the groundwork for showing all of other nations or other cultures in other nations that these people, the Eldians, were a threat not only to the Marley but to other nations as well. And so yeah, so it's kind of a dumb thing for the Eldians to do, to create like giant kaiju's to rule over everybody, because eventually everyone will grow to see these things as abominations and will be hated, and they will eventually be persecuted. So as much as I like to agree with Erin's side of the Marley people manipulated everything and wanted to wipe out his entire people, um, the truth is that their people, the aliens, originally were antagonists from the very beginning, warlords. Now, what I'm saying with regards to Marley and to the Eldians, it's not defined and it's not stated 100% if the Marley people ever were conquerors of the aliens from the very beginning, like rule over them, made slaves of them. It was never defined in the manga that they were a tyrant ruling party over the aliens. They had slaves, and I'm pretty sure they were tyrant over somebody, but it was never stated that it was the aliens specifically. It was only stated that the aliens was a powerful um, barbarian nation, and eventually was a threat towards the Marley people. Vice versa, the Marleys were a threat towards the the Eldians. So it's like two fighting powerful people who wanted to one up each other. But yeah, that said, neither the Marleys or the Eldians are good, in my opinion, in this anime. So, or and in the manga. So after Yermer gives the whole conversation after Armin describes how Eren's body looks right now based on taking on the progenitor's injection or virus, however you want to call it, or flesh. He's taking on the form of the original Yermer Fritz body in size and in form. Um, yeah, moving on from that, he's now commanding all the colossal titans and invading many lands, and he has vast amount of power based on this. And so, one of his powers um, is also telekinesis. I guess he could read minds of those who are speaking. So as everyone's having their conversation of how they're going to deal with with Eren, he telepathically transport them to a location in his mind, and in this area, he basically told them that he's not going to stop, and he's going to wipe out everyone else that's not an Eldian. So this is why I'm saying the Eldians aren't really good people at all. No matter how much you want to defend them from their persecution and them being slaves and everything, they were never good people, because back then they were also slave owners. So even if you say the Marley people first enslaved the Eldians, the fact that the Eldians had slaves to begin with, before they were even conquered by the Marley people and made slaves, before that, like way before that, before Marley even knew that aliens exist and aliens even knew that Marley existed, both of these nations had slaves. So they were never, neither of them were ever good to begin with. So what I'm saying is, moving forward, whatever Eren's purpose is to defend his people, his last of his people, rather than to be completely wiped out. And so the Marley people could win, because that's basically the reason why Eren is pushing forward, to ensure the survival of the Eldians and to make sure the wicked deeds of the Marley people, the lie that he was given his entire life, the truth that he was supposed to be told that, the Titans were wicked, and when it's discovered that the Titans were actually not wicked, was a byproduct of a wicked Titan or a wicked king of the Eldians, but they themselves were not wicked people, and the Marley basically manipulated everything. So it was this pissing contest. He basically saw all those who sided with the Marleys as evil, and saw them as wicked people to try to wipe out an entire species, just so people could live the lie and false belief that Eldians are all wicked when they're not. It's just a lie that the Marley people made. So is that enough to wipe out an entire species of human beings simply to reconfirm that everything was a lie? No, that's not good reasons. That's not good reasons to commit genocide so that only your Eldian people exist. Because I don't think Eren understands that who he's supporting aren't exactly good. The king was never a good person. Those who served the king were never good people. The deeds that they did, the brutality that they did towards others in Titan form, they turn into giant-sized Titan and start tramping down on children and men and stuff. It's inhumane type of things, of way of doing things. Eventually, even the Freaks, even Yerma Freaks' descendants, try to make peace with regards to the other nations, with regards to these horrific things that their giant kaiju forms were doing. You can't. People won't make peace with you when they see their children getting eaten by giant creatures. So yeah, that's the reason why Eren wants to defend his people to the last. But like, even though all those horrific things were done, he doesn't believe that you can voluntarily decide to wipe out his species completely. So his solution to it is to wipe out everybody else's species completely and let only Eldians exist. That's why Eren is the antagonist of this final season of Attack on Titan. So with that said, moving on, we see a group of survivors here, and these group of survivors are hoping to escape from the colossal titans, walking and treading over everything, killing. And a huge bombardment happened to try to see if they could destroy all the titans. However, the bombing didn't work. Dropping the bombs on the giant foreign body of Eren's body, spinal body of his gigantic titan form body, does not work um, at all. In fact, it does nothing, and they all get destroyed anyway. So dropping canisters of flammable explosions, all it does is just basically piss off Eren. And Eren basically wiped them out. After that, there was no hope. Basically, the only solution left was for Armin, Levi, and the rest of the crew to jump in and to stop Eren on his own. I mean, on their own. So everyone who Eren used to roll with are against him now, because you can't voluntarily decide to wipe out an entire species of human beings simply because of a lie that was created for the survival of another species. To justify wiping out one simply to punishing the other is just evil. That's why in the end of the Attack on Titan season 4, um, I'm pretty sure everyone knows what's going to happen. You have to realize the Marley people were never good. The Eldians were never good. But the people who are trying to survive now has nothing to do with that bullshit. And so they're going to use the exact things which Eldians created to stop the Eldians. Titans against Titans in order to stop them, to save the remainder of humanity. And what's wild about all this, what's crazy and strange about all this in Attack on Titan, is that they're all human beings. Eldians are humans. They're just called Eldians. Marley people are humans. They're just called Marleys. It's like Africa. Africans are human beings, and Australians are human beings, and people who live in England are human beings, and Russians are human beings. They're all human beings. You know, They're just the name that they have is just the name of their nation. It's not that their bloodline is of a different type of DNA. They don't bleed like blue blood. Marley don't bleed blue blood, and Eldians don't bleed like red blood. They're not different species type. They're all human beings. They're just from different nations. At least it was described in the manga as such that they're not like aliens to each other. They're all from the same planet. They're all from the same culture. They're all Homo sapiens to that level. So yeah, it's just the name of different nations. So it's basically human beings fighting against human beings. The main difference is that they've now discovered that how to create creatures in order to fight for them by turning into said creatures. That's all that is. Or by turning others into said creatures and let those things unleash on society. I mean, guns are useless against giant sized titans because their skin is like rock hard steel. Like bombs are useless against giant titans because once again their bodies are like rock hard steel. The only way to penetrate through any type of kaiju is basically to get something that could cut through a diamond, or a type of gun that's diamond in shape, or can saw straight through anything. That's the only way to take on a titan. So a titan's flesh is like harder than that of a rhino's flesh, or an armadillo's carapace. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that's the end of this first episode with regards to Attack on Titan, and how they're going to take down Eren is going to be the most spectacular thing ever. Because I know it's not going to be spectacular as in yes, it's awesome. It's going to be a tragic ending for someone, and it's not going to be that happy-go-lucky ending. It's going to be a bittersweet ending. But this was always this type of anime from the jump. It wasn't that happy-go-lucky anime. It was a survival anime against all odds. And at the end, there is going to be a happy ending, but it's going to be at the cost of something very dear. So yeah, that was the first episode of season 4 of Attack on Titan. And yes, there are no other release series for the month of March due to um, streaming services and other factors. I've searched and I've checked, and as much as I want to see Blue Giant, and as much as I want to see Kimi no Ashita, and as much as I want to see Sword Art Online Progressive, um, not not the not the sheetless one, the depth one, the latest one, and as much as I want to see Slam Dunk from 2022, and of course Suzume from also 2022, the movie, which was about 6 months ago. Now that I think about it, um, yeah, I would have to purchase all three, one, two, three, four, all five to be specific, and five. I would have to purchase all five of these through a Blu-ray in order to see them, because you cannot get them through any streaming services at the moment. At the moment, the only thing streaming right now is Attack on Titan season 4, episode 1 for the month of March. For the month of February is a different story, but I'm mostly dealing with what's going on in the month of March now. Nothing new. Jujutsu Kaisen is delayed. Demon Slayer is delayed. So this is what I got for the month of March right now, and hopefully in April I get to see Blue Giant. Hopefully in April I'll get to see Suzume in streaming services. Yes, you could buy these products from an Amazon store or online, a physical product. But if you're waiting for streaming service, it ain't gonna happen anytime soon. or at least not in February and March. So hopefully in April there is going to be streaming services for Suzumi no Tojimari. It's weird. It's like it's been more than 6 months and this thing still hasn't come out for March of 2023. So if it doesn't come out in April of 2023, I'm really gonna just give up on Suzumi no Tojimari completely and just buy it straight out. I'll buy it straight out. This the whole point of having Netflix and the whole point of having Crunchyroll is so you don't have to wait forever for these things. The most I would wait for an anime that was supposed to come out, um, that came out a month, like say a new anime came out in February. The most I'll wait for it is in March. So if I'm waiting for something for more than 3 months, after that, I give up on it. So for this one, for specific for Subazume, I've waited 6 months for this. So that means it's that good. Suzume no Tojimari is that good. So if I'm willing to wait 6 months for this, then after the 6 months, I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna have to buy it straight out. So yeah, Attack on Titan, real good, real going well right now. The season 4 has kicked off in March. You can find the first episode in online, and probably is going to go to Netflix soon. And Crunchyroll probably has it. As for Blue Giant, as for Kimi wa Ashita or Boke wa Ashita, depending on which one you want to purchase. Um, and Sword Art Online Progressive, Shares No of the Deep, and the first Slam Dunk, and of course Suzume. These are all products you will have to buy from an Amazon store or CD Japan, but as streaming services go, they're not available at the moment. So that's it for this month anime release. And there's no new anime to be released in the month of March because everything new to be released in the month of March is on Blu-ray and not on a streaming service. And I don't do things I physically buy. I do things on the streaming service which I pay for. So until it gets there, that's when I'll watch it.